8 months ago, the United States crossed a line it took 249 years to reach: $38 trillion in debt. By the middle of this year, it was already closing in on $39.3 trillion and rising by roughly $7 to $8 billion a day. In a single year, the debt grew by almost $3 trillion. But here is the thing. The giant number everyone quotes is not actually the part that matters. A debt is only as dangerous as your ability to carry it. To know whether $39 trillion is a catastrophe or just a very large number, you have to stop staring at the total and look at two things instead: the size of the economy behind it and the interest being paid on it. Because in 2026, something quietly changed. For the first time in American history, the government now spends more on interest than on its own military. Let's break down what that actually means.
So, is $39 trillion too much? On its own, that question is meaningless. The same way, is a $50,000 loan too much is meaningless until you know whether the borrower earns $30,000 a year or $3 million. What matters is the debt compared to the size of the economy, debt to GDP. And here, the picture is genuinely historic. Measured against the whole economy, the debt held by the public is now around 101% of GDP. Count everything, the gross debt, and it is past 120%. To put that in perspective, the United States has now edged past the record it set at the very end of the Second World War, when it borrowed everything it had to win a global conflict. Except this time, there is no World War. This is peacetime, and the Congressional Budget Office projects it keeps climbing for decades. The debt is not just big. Relative to the economy, it is now the biggest it has ever been. How did we get here? Not from one decision, and not from one party. The honest answer is a little boring, which is exactly why it's true. For decades, under administrations of both parties, the government spent more than it collected, running a deficit in almost every year, in good times and bad. Tax cuts added to it. Spending programs added to it. Then came two shocks. First, the pandemic, when the government borrowed trillions in a matter of months to keep the economy from collapsing. And second, the one that turned a chronic problem into an acute one: interest rates. For years, debt had been cheap. Borrowing cost almost nothing. When inflation forced rates higher and kept them there, the bill on all of that accumulated debt suddenly came due at a far higher price. So this is not a story about a villain. It's a story about a structure. Spend a little more than you earn for long enough, and eventually the interest catches up with you.
And that interest is the real story here. For most of the last 20 years, the government's interest payments were an afterthought, background noise in the budget. Then they exploded. In the 2025 fiscal year, for the first time in history, the total interest on the national debt crossed $1 trillion. Let that land. $1 trillion in a single year just to service the debt. Not to pay it down, just to pay the interest on it. For the current fiscal year, the Congressional Budget Office projects net interest of around $1 trillion, equal to about 3.3% of the entire economy, the highest share since 1991. And unlike most of the budget, this number is not a choice. Congress can debate how much to spend on roads or defense or healthcare, but the interest on money already borrowed is not optional. It comes off the top automatically before anything else gets decided. Every time rates stay higher for longer, this bill grows on autopilot. This is why the total debt matters less than people think, and the cost of it matters far more.
To see just how big that interest bill has become, compare it to everything else the government spends money on. For generations, the largest pieces of the federal budget were predictable: Social Security, healthcare, and national defense. That order has now broken. As of this year, the interest on the debt is larger than the entire national defense budget. It is roughly the size of Medicare, and in the whole federal budget, the only thing bigger than interest is Social Security. Think about what that means in plain terms. The single fastest growing thing the United States government spends money on is not its military, not its roads, not its scientists. It is the interest on what it already owes. And every one of those $1 trillion is a dollar that cannot go to anything else. Economists call this crowding out, when the cost of the past starts eating the choices of the future. That is the quiet danger of a large debt. Not that the number is frightening, that the interest slowly takes the government's options away.
So who actually owns all this debt? There is a popular answer. We owe it all to China, and it is almost entirely wrong. Let's follow the money. Of the 39 trillion, about 8 trillion is not really owed to anyone outside the government at all. It's money the government owes itself, mostly to the Social Security Trust Fund. Of the rest, the debt held by the public, the single largest domestic holder is the Federal Reserve, with around $4.5 trillion in treasuries. Foreign governments and investors together hold roughly 9 to 9.5 trillion, meaningful, but less than a quarter of the total. And within that foreign slice, the biggest lender is not China. It is Japan, at about 1.2 trillion. The United Kingdom is second. China is third, around 650 billion, and it has been steadily selling, now down to its lowest level since the 2008 financial crisis. The truth is less dramatic, but more important. The overwhelming majority of America's debt is owed to Americans, to U.S. pension funds, banks, insurers, and ordinary households. When the government pays interest, most of it flows right back to its own citizens. Which brings us to the question this channel always asks: who benefits and who pays? A national debt is, at its heart, a transfer machine. Someone gets money now, someone pays it back later. Who benefits now? First, the government itself. It gets to spend today and hand the bill to tomorrow, which is exactly why politicians of every stripe find borrowing so easy. And second, everyone holding those treasuries, now collecting the highest interest income in a generation, which, remember, is mostly American pension funds, banks, and the Federal Reserve, alongside lenders like Japan. So who pays? Two groups. The obvious one is future taxpayers, who inherit both the debt and its interest. The subtler one is anyone holding cash and earning wages. Because the oldest, quietest way a government has ever shrunk a debt it borrowed in its own currency is to let inflation slowly erode it. Serious economists now discuss that risk openly. The point is not to alarm you, it's to see the machine clearly. Debt moves wealth across time, from the future into the present, and it never moves for free. So how does this end? A government facing a debt this size has really only ever had 3 honest options, and 1 dishonest one. The first? Grow out of it. If the economy grows faster than the debt, the burden shrinks on its own. It's the painless path, and also the hardest to guarantee. The second? Tax more. Raise revenue to close the gap. Politically brutal, but arithmetically simple. The third? Spend less. Cut the budget. Equally brutal, and made harder by the fact that the fastest growing line item, the interest, cannot be cut at all. And then there is the fourth lever, the one governments rarely admit to: inflation. Let prices rise, and the real value of the debt quietly melts away, paid off not with a vote, but with the erosion of everyone's savings. Which path the United States takes is genuinely uncertain, and economists disagree. But notice the shape of it. 3 of the 4 options are painful, and the 4th is a hidden tax. There is no free exit from $39 trillion. There is only a choice about who pays and how. So, what does $39 trillion actually mean for you? Not a cliff. The United States borrows in its own currency. It will not simply run out of money and default. What it means is subtler and longer.
It means the pressure to keep interest rates and inflation in the conversation for years to come. It means every future debate about taxes, spending, and the dollar now happens in the shadow of a $1 trillion interest bill. And it means the government's room to maneuver in a crisis, a war, a recession is quietly narrower than it was. That is the real lesson of the number. A great power's debt does not announce itself with a collapse. It shows up as a slow tightening of options, a squeeze, not a cliff. And understanding that is worth far more than fearing the headline. This has been Money and Power Explained.